Okay, now for more analysis, I'm joined by Albert Keidel. He's an adjunct economics professor at George Washington University's Elliott School of International Affairs. Thanks very much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Now, significant move for Beijing. China says COVID has in part led to some complexities in its economies, risk, challenges, and is ready to step in to help. Now, firstly, how unusual do you think this is and to make the announcement? And what do you think Beijing did to get to this point?
Well, I think they've been here before. There was a Delta wave last summer, and if you look at the monthly data, seasonally adjusted, there was also an investment response in the months that followed. And so this is to be expected. And it's good policy. It's what's called counter-cyclical demand, because demand really is what can maintain employment and maintain incomes. And so this is a typical move. Investment is the easiest way if it's introduced through the fiscal system by government spending, easiest way to maintain demand and employment and income. And so I think it's to be expected that China wants to maintain its growth momentum, and it has a very low inflation rate, so that this is quite doable.
Now, Albert, you have a book out, China's Economic Challenge, Unconventional Success. I want to talk about the lockdowns and the shutdowns that we have seen. Now, China is trying its best to keep a lid on COVID from spreading. Tell me about the challenges going on at this moment, more than 2 years into the pandemic.
Well, the challenges are to try to kill the virus by not having its hosts keep spreading. And it's really remarkable accomplishment around the world. And my friends ask me, well, why is China doing this? And my one answer is lives. These are lives that are saved. They are relatives and friends and parents and children that are still alive. And so I think this is the highest priority for China. But then the economy needs to keep going. And so there are now short-term stimuli, particularly for small businesses. You think in retail or in restaurants, food services, the kinds of small businesses that will be badly hurt by COVID. And so I think it's only natural that China's doing what it is, which is to provide them with credits, or if they're exporting, to provide them with export rebate to extend their tax payments. It's a very good program to focus on who's really getting hit most by COVID.
You know, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's all about lives. But if you talk to people looking from the outside looking in, it comes back to what people have talked about for quite some time, finding a balance between that zero tolerance COVID policy and keeping the economic engines firing.
Well, it is a balance, but you know, what's the value of a life? In economics, we have to do cost-benefit analysis, and they actually put a value on a life because workers fall into, say, the cement pour on a large bridge, and they're gone. You don't stop the pour; they're just gone, and you have to say that's a cost. But if you're talking about a whole country, a country, say, 4 times the size of the United States, and the value of all the lives that you're saving, it so overwhelms the costs of actually making efforts to maintain output with the kinds of things that China has been doing. It just overwhelms the significance of those costs to the financial economy.
Now, during your intro, I said that COVID is only part of the problem. The fighting between Russia and Ukraine is being felt globally, and China is not exempt.
Well, that's right, and China will be, exposed to the price changes. It will be the energy changes that are going on. There will be sanction reverberations, and those are hurting countries around the world, particularly those that are related to Russia. And China has a balanced position, and it's very hard to. It's not an economic position. It has to do with sovereignty, and it has to do with also a balancing and a political architecture, a security architecture, where each nation's safety doesn't become an excuse to impinge on the safety of others. And so China has to walk that balance, and I think it's doing that. And it is also, I think the decisions they made about drones, it hurts their businesses. But it's fitting in with this balanced response to China's priorities, which are sovereignty and also an architecture that can work for everybody.
Last question here. I wanted you to perhaps dive a little bit deeper in, because they're looking at what the Politburo, when it met, also looked at the most recent 5-year plan. What sorts of measures or policy adjustments do you think we can see out of Beijing? And I'm curious how the all-important tech sectors and the markets are doing and how they are going to be affected by this.
Well, I think they're going to be fine. China has such a robust program of investment, of technology development. Sure, it's got a long way to go before it reaches sort of a Dutch level of chip manufacturing capability. But what it really needs to do is to make sure that the cost of COVID doesn't get out of hand. Just think how Beijing would have to watch China shut down if it spread in the way that it spread in the United States. And in the long term, that China's major goal, I think, in this 5-year plan and moving ahead is to finally get going on the integration of the rural workforce in the urban workforce. There are a lot of issues about accomplishing that, and they've started work on it, but they want to make sure that the tech companies, they're going to be all right. They need to be regulated. They can't have a strong political influence the way they do in other countries. So I think the balance that China's striking here is really the right one.